Thanksgiving at my family's house is always a circus. The kids are usually screaming, the adults are yelling about politics, and someone's inevitably forgotten the rolls in the oven until they're charcoal. But this year, the chaos came from a different source. It wasn't the kind of chaos you can fix with a second glass of wine. No, this year, chaos arrived in the form of my Grandma Edith. I was late, as usual. Blame it on traffic, or procrastination. When I finally rushed through the door with a muttered apology, my mom just gave me her patented disappointed look. But it wasn't Mom who stole the show that evening. It was Grandma sitting at the head of the table, swirling a glass of wine with the kind of serene smile you only see on people who know something you don't. "Mercury's in retrograde," she announced, as though that explained everything. The room went quiet. Uncle Frank, in the middle of mashing his potatoes, froze like someone had hit the pause button. My cousin Danielle snorted into her drink. I'd barely stepped through the doorway, and already I could feel the tension simmering like the gravy on the stove. "The Enlightened One warned me this might happen," Grandma added, taking a delicate sip of wine. "The Enlightened One?" I repeated, shrugging off my coat. "Grandma, who's that? A psychic? Some new podcast you're into?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she clasped her hands under her chin, her diamond brooch catching the light like a badge of honor. She gave me this look, part serene, part smug, that I'd only ever seen on people trying to sell essential oils. "The Enlightened One," she said slowly, "is the guiding light of my new spiritual path." That should have been my cue to shut up, but I didn't. "What spiritual path?" I asked, sliding into my chair and reaching for a roll. "She joined a cult," Uncle Frank muttered, not even looking up from his plate. Grandma's smile tightened. "It's not a cult," she snapped. "It's a retreat, a community of like-minded individuals seeking higher vibrations and universal truth." "A cult," Uncle Frank repeated, flat as a pancake. I stared at her, my roll halfway to my mouth. "So, this is like yoga class, but with more chanting?" Grandma smiled again, annoyingly calm. "It's much more than that, Samuel. It's about enlightenment, purpose, and transcending the petty concerns of this material world." "I don't think you're allowed to talk about transcending material concerns while wearing a diamond brooch," I pointed out, gesturing at the jewel pinned to her sweater. She just chuckled, patting my hand like I was a child who'd asked why the sky was blue. "You wouldn't understand yet," she said, "but one day, when you're ready, I'll show you the way." It was at that moment I realized something was seriously up. Grandma's always been eccentric, the kind of woman who names her plants after deceased celebrities and uses her dog's horoscope to plan her day. But this was something else entirely. When she said "the way," it didn't sound like she meant a book club or a new Netflix series. It sounded more like an ominous invitation to a secret society. By the time dinner was over, the usual family arguments about politics and football felt like background noise compared to the storm brewing in my head. I couldn't stop thinking about Grandma and her Enlightened One. Later that night, as I helped her clear the dishes, I noticed something sticking out of her knitting bag. It was glossy, colorful, and definitely out of place. I pulled it out and froze. The title alone was enough to make me do a double take. Ascend to Power, Becoming a Cult Leader in 10 Steps. "Grandma," I said, holding it up like it was radioactive, "what the hell is this?" She snatched it back so fast I nearly lost a finger. "It's not a cult," she said sharply. "It's a spiritual retreat." "And what step are you on?" I asked, already bracing for her answer. "Step 8, she said, puffing up with pride. "Leadership through enlightenment." I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, but she didn't. She was dead serious. "You should come see for yourself," she added, smiling sweetly. "You could use some enlightenment in your life, Samuel." "Yeah," I said, dripping with sarcasm. "Because nothing screams enlightenment like my grandma running a pyramid scheme for spiritual vibes." "It's not a pyramid scheme," she shot back, "and you'll thank me one day." At that point, I should have walked away, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. What could I say? It's not every day your grandma invites you to a cult. The following Saturday, I found myself riding shotgun in Grandma's car, bouncing along a gravel road. "You're going to love it," she said, practically glowing. "The community is so welcoming, and everyone's energy is just so aligned." I glanced at the golden knitting needle dangling from her rearview mirror. "Do they hand those out at the door, or is that something you have to earn?" She chuckled. You're cheeky, but you'll see. When we finally pulled up, I thought I'd stepped onto the set of a movie. The place was enormous, tall gates, immaculate gardens, and people in flowing white robes chanting softly as they walked. But the centerpiece? A massive statue of a woman, and it looked exactly like Grandma. Grandma, I said, pointing, why does that statue look like you? She waved dismissively. Oh, the community insisted. They're just grateful for my guidance. Guidance? I echoed. Are you running this place? Before she could answer, a man in a leather vest strode toward us. He was huge, with a beard that would have made a lumberjack jealous. He bowed deeply. High Oracle, he said reverently. The council is ready for your wisdom. High Oracle, I hissed. Grandma smirked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Welcome to Step 8, she said. That afternoon, I sat in the back of a grand hall as Grandma took the stage. She wore a sequined robe, holding a golden knitting needle like a scepter. The crowd cheered as she raised her hands. Life, she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall, is like a ball of yarn, messy, tangled, and full of knots. But with patience, vision, and the right tools, we can knit it into something beautiful. The crowd erupted into applause. Some people waved scarves and blankets they had knitted themselves, as if they were holy relics. Meanwhile, I sat there in disbelief. After the sermon, Grandma led me to her quarters, a lavish suite that looked more like a 5-star hotel room than anything else. Grandma, I said, this is insane. These people think you're some kind of prophet. She poured herself a cup of tea, entirely unbothered. I've given them purpose, she said. Hope, a sense of belonging. What's so bad about that? You're taking their money, I countered. She shrugged. Only as much as they're willing to give. And besides, they get something in return. Community, wisdom, beautiful knitted scarves. Over the next few days, I discovered more about Grandma's kingdom. Not everyone was thrilled with her leadership. A faction led by an ambitious woman named Lena believed it was time for a new vision. Tensions grew during daily ceremonies, and whispers of rebellion buzzed through the compound. One evening, during a packed gathering in the Grand Hall, Lena made her move. High Oracle, she shouted, rising from her seat. Your time is up. The Enlightened One demands change. Gasps filled the hall as followers turned to Lena, then back to Grandma. My heart sank. This was about to get ugly. Grandma rose slowly, her golden knitting needle glinting under the lights. My dear Lena, she said, her voice calm but firm. Life is like a dropped stitch. You can pull at it until everything unravels, or you can take a moment to fix it. The choice is yours. The room fell silent. Even Lena seemed unsure how to respond. Finally, she muttered something about needing more spiritual clarity and sat down. The crowd erupted into cheers, and Grandma's position as leader was solidified. As if the internal rebellion wasn't enough, the IRS launched an investigation into the Knitting Club after noticing suspiciously large donations. An agent disguised as a new recruit arrived at the compound, but Grandma's sharp eyes spotted her immediately. We have a visitor, Grandma whispered to her bodyguard, Carl. Let's see how she handles the beginner's test. The test involved knitting blindfolded while chanting mantras. The agent's awkward attempts to keep up were enough to make Carl chuckle under his breath. I'll deal with her, Grandma said later, inviting the agent to tea. By the end of their conversation, the agent seemed more impressed by Grandma's charm than interested in shutting the place down. Eventually, Grandma decided it was time to step back. I've done my part, she told me. Now it's someone else's turn. She handed leadership to Carl, who promised to run the community with integrity and fewer statues. Grandma used the funds she'd saved to start a legitimate charity, teaching knitting to underprivileged communities. Now, she spends her days in a cozy retirement home, surrounded by yarn and still dishing out wisdom. Never underestimate a grandma with a vision, she told me during my last visit. And you know what? She's absolutely right. Looking back, I still can't believe it all happened. But one thing's for sure, Thanksgiving will never be the same again.